Hello and welcome in. We got an exciting show lined up for you today. I'm J Dog, that's Andy, and we are doing a special trade deadline preview today. We got the trade deadline today is Saturday, the March 1st, and the deadline is coming up this Friday. So we figured a great time to do a trade deadline preview. There hasn't been a lot happening as of yet, so we wanted to get ahead of it and look at what we think the Canucks should do, might do, could do, and yeah, just go over what's happening. So, yeah, kick it off to
Ab-
you, Andy.
Absolutely. So, figure a good place to start is going to be what exactly do we think the Canucks should be doing ahead of the deadline? Where do they stand now? So, I think we can start from maybe the goalie position, work our way out. What do you think, J Dog?
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
Excellent. So, I mean, we've got Lankinen locked up now for the foreseeable future. Um, how are you feeling about the goaltending situation as a whole?
Hmm. Honestly, I'm feeling pretty okay about it. I think if we like, this has been a bad year for Demko injury wise. He's had a pretty bad injury history over the past few years, but he played most of last season. And this has been a particularly bad one. So I wonder, like, I think we can just keep trying with him. I know he works his butt off trying to get back into game shape. So I think like we just keep trying with him, and we've got Lankinen now who's been playing great, and we've got him locked up. So I think if you want, you can try and use the developed goaltenders in Abby. You can try and bring in some like entry level contract type thing or league min contract goaltender to try and fill that spot like they've done with Casey DeSmith and Kevin Lankinen prior to this contract. But yeah, I think it's pretty. I'm pretty happy with it, especially with the defense we have. I don't think you need to have the greatest goaltender in the world. Um, I mean, we've seen Aiden Hill win the Stanley Cup with Vegas a couple years ago. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Kevin Lankinen is more than capable of filling that kind of a role. Um, and if the team in front of him is good enough to go on a run, I think he's absolutely good enough to backstop a team like that that has real Stanley Cup aspirations. I don't think the Canucks are there, and I don't think that's a very hot take to say that. Um, I'm worried about Demko, and I think that the Canucks committed to that length and value of a contract to Lankinen shows that they're worried about Demko as well.
Right.
But I think that Lankinen has shown that he's capable of carrying a load. Now we'll see how that lasts long term. You may end up having to go and get a solid guy to kind of 1A, 1B with him. But for the time being, I am more than happy to roll with the situation as is. Shilovs has not been instilling an awful lot of confidence into myself or probably most Canuck fans, but we have also seen him elevate his game when it really matters. So we know he's got that in him. So I think as, you know, when we have games that aren't particularly important, I think it's good to get Shilovs some more NHL games under his belt, try to understand what you have there. Um, you know, those internal options for backing up Lankinen if Demko's injuries continue to be an issue. But all in all, I don't feel like it's something that absolutely needs to be addressed right now. I think we're in a pretty good place.
Totally. Um, we also have Ty Young, Prince George former Prince George Cougars goaltender, who has recently had 6 games with the Abbotsford Canucks. In those, he went 3-3 with a 269 goals against average and a 901 save percentage.
Nothing
It
wrong with
was
that.
first that was his first crack at anything professional. Before that, he's been playing with Kalamazoo
The
Wings in the
Wings.
ECHL, and then the Cougars. So yeah, that's another hopeful prospect too that could potentially come in and fill that third spot if we need a guy there.
Yeah. I was at the Cougars game last night. got to watch Joshua Ravensburger in net, and he's the projected first North American goalie off the board
I'm
this year's
so
draft,
excited. He's the goalie of the future for Canada. No more
right?
Jordan Bennington.
Oh, I think it would be so great to see. He's so solid in net. Prince George, you're so lucky to have him, and yeah, I was thinking about it last night too. That I think Bob McKenzie had his going into the season. He had him around 20th in the first round. I'm like, boy, if Vancouver fades a little more towards the deadline, that's around where they'd be picking. Yeah, depending on how things play out with Demko, you never know. But
For sure.
yeah, very exciting. Um, Defense. I don't know about you, J Dog, but my thoughts around the defense going into the trade deadline are it's good where it is. I have no real burning desire to see that change. How about you?
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I think we've got Quinn Hughes, who is an elite player, maybe arguably the best defenseman in the league. Philip Hronik, who's been very solid. Um, Marcus Pettersson just really is like the perfect third defenseman on a good team.
Truly.
And then Tyler Myers, solid role guy, team guy, knows how to take penalties and score big goals. And then we got Elias Pettersson, who has come in and been just a breath of fresh air for this team. It's been so exciting to see him just I don't know how to say it, like suit up and just go and not worry about anything really. Um,
It's
it's
almost
been
that
really fun.
belief that he came in and he's just I am an NHL defenseman,
Yeah,
right? There wasn't that those tentative baby steps. It was just confidence and calm, collected play. And
without stupid decisions. Like he wasn't cocky. He wasn't making decisions that are putting him way out of position over and over and over. He's making the safe play, but when he sees like he needs to step up, he's doing it. Kind of reminds me of Thomas Harley a little bit, the young player for the Dallas Stars that had a really great tournament with Team Canada at Four Nations as well. Um, and then we got Derek Forbert, who I was not huge on going into the year and through much of the beginning of the year. But what he has done for this penalty kill has, for me, been like that fulfills the contract. As long as he can be the main part of a like one of the best penalty kills in the league, I will be very happy. So, and then we
he
got
and the elder Pedersen on defense have been just fantastic on the
yes,
penalty kill. And I shudder to think what the Canucks situation would be like if they didn't have such a good penalty kill right now. Because the
totally.
couple of wins that they have gotten with a subpar penalty kill, those may be losses, and it could be real ugly right now.
Totally, completely
Considering
agree.
they're like dead last in goal scoring, I think, since I don't know, Christmas or New Year's.
It's real bad.
If they gave
Um,
up more goals, oh, it could be ugly.
Celebrini in San Jose has more points, I believe it is, than any forward on the Canucks. So, yes.
And that's on San Jose and having missed significant
Yes,
time.
and having missed significant time.
Yeah.
Um, then
And
we
also
have,
on the back end, I think you're gonna continue that thought.
oh, yeah, we have Carson Soucy and Victor Mancini. Um, just like Carson Soucy was a top four defenseman last year and looked good on shutting
Solid one.
down like the top Oilers players in round two. Um, so I mean, we'll see. There's rumors about him being on the trade block and that sort of thing. So we'll kind of see what happens there. And then Victor Mancini, who we just recently acquired, seems like he's got a lot of potential, but haven't had a lot of chance to see him yet. So yeah,
I've kind of loved them going with the seven defensemen in the last few games. I think it gives you the opportunity to slide a guy like Mancini into the lineup and get a look at him in some of those lower pressure, low leverage situations, just to kind of see what's there. Um, and then the other thing is we have Willander waiting in the wings, right? And he's
exactly.
looking like he's going to be a legitimate NHL player. He's been really good at every level, having another really good season in the NCAA. So I think I think that just kind of solidifies that the back end is solid now, and it's going to be solid moving forward. We're going to get into some likely Canucks trades, but I think the fact that we've seen Carson Soucy fall from a 3-4 defenseman on a team that almost went to the conference finals last year
Yeah,
to being on the outside looking in on a team that's on the bubble, may not even make the playoffs. I don't even think it says that much about Soucy. He has struggled, but I think it speaks to how much stronger the Canucks defense as a whole has gotten, and some guys filling more defined roles, right?
totally. Yeah.
Like, is Carson Soucy a better defenseman than Derek Forbert? All told, maybe.
Hmm.
You could argue that for
Hmm.
sure. But Forbert fills one specific
Yeah,
niche role very well. So
totally.
he's super important, and he plays for next to nothing. So
Yeah.
that's a nice bonus as well.
Another guy to mention would be Sawyer Minio. Played on Team Canada World Juniors this year. We'll
Yes,
see kind of, again, it's so hard to know what prospects will end up being when they actually make it to the NHL. But that's just another guy that, could play in your top four and then as soon as the next like 3 years. So yeah.
absolutely. And up front, I think this is probably where we're both the most concerned about this team. Just mentioned their complete inability to score goals the last few months. Um, yeah, where do you even start analyzing their needs up front?
Likely at center, probably at center. Um, so first line center right now, we have Elias Pettersson,
Technically,
technically. At least he wears that jersey.
yeah,
Um, and then we have Philip Hedl, newly acquired, and I think has looked pretty decent. Maybe hasn't had the offensive touch that we were seeing in the first couple of games, but has had the energy, and I think is kind of what we were expecting. Um, Pia Suter, pending UFA, and Teddy Bluger, who has been kind of like a defensive forward, what kind of a guy you want in that fourth spot, I think.
yeah. That's those are all technically centers. Um, not a lot of confidence there. We've talked about Heedle a fair bit, and I think the general consensus on Heedle as a third line center on a contending team, fantastic. You'd love to have that situation. If he's forced into a 2C role, which he effectively is in Vancouver at the moment, it might be a bit much for him. Um, if you're wanting to be a contending team, you probably have to address that position ahead of him in the lineup. Certainly, Pedersen something needs to happen there, whether that's finding his game or moving off of him. Something's got to give there. But yeah, I really like Heedle. I'm glad to have him, but I would love to see him as a 3C and then have one of Suter Bluger types as the fourth C.
I agree. And I think with Philip Hedel as your 3C, you like that's a really good 3C. So I think it leaves room to not need a really good 2C if you can't get it. I think it's like, okay, if you have another Philip Hedel to put in the 2C, I think that's pretty decent. I'm quite happy with that, I think. And then you can switch the guy whoever has the hotter line, who's ever going. Yeah.
That's really interesting that you said that because we haven't, J Dog and I haven't discussed our the trades that we would like to see happen, but he is heading down the street that my trades have aimed to tackle. It's not going to be very top heavy, but it's going to be deep, and I think there may be something to that, but
Yeah.
we will get into that a little bit. So obviously we need some upgrades on center. I think that goes without saying at this point. How do you feel about the wings?
Well, let's start left wing. We got Jake DeBrusk. We got Dakota Joshua. We've got Drew O'Connor, and we've got whoever I like on the image here, you'll see Carson Soucy, but that's just because the Canucks went 11-7 last game. Their next, like usually they'll put in like a Lekramaki or Archdeep Baines, one of their kind of Abbey players that they're bringing up to try him out. Um, I think I would prefer Jake DeBrusk on a second line winger, but I'm fine with him at first line winger. It's fine. It's good. Dakota Joshua would prefer him as a third line winger. And Drew O'Connor would prefer him as a fourth line winger. I think we're needing that top six left winger, in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, I think in my envisioned scenario, we can get by without adding that top flight winger. But then you need to be really adding guys that can drive play down the middle. You need J Dog actually introduced me to the idea of this earlier in this season about focusing on the guys that can drive play, right, versus being those complementary pieces. We kind of focused in on Besser as an example of a guy who does a good job complementing the players on his line. He's a good finisher, but he doesn't go out there and really make those things happen. He's an opportunistic goal scorer, I would describe it. And the team needs, I think, a lot more of those guys who can go out there and make things happen. And the funny thing is that maybe one of the guys that I see out there making things happen more than anybody else is a guy like Nils Höglander. He doesn't have a lot
Yeah.
to show for it necessarily, but on most of his shifts, he's out there setting up chances. Guys are getting good looks from the work that he's putting in. So it's interesting, and I've tried to focus a little bit more on identifying those guys that can drive play. But honestly, I'm not even sure what the best way to do that is. If there's
Hmm.
some combination of stats that are tracked that taken together add up to a play driving guy, because those play driving guys, I think they're inching towards dog territory,
Hmm.
right?
I would think that the stat you'd be looking for would be like shots for, shots against while they're on the ice. Maybe would be an indicator of that.
Not necessarily
Um,
their shots, but
correct.
shots for the team while
Exactly.
they're out.
Exactly. That's kind of one of the ways I'm looking at that. Maybe like offensive time, but that might be situational when the coach puts you out there too and that sort of thing. So for me, I'm kind of looking like shots for, shots against, but I'm sure there's other metrics as well, that would illustrate that maybe even better.
Yeah. And I think the eye test is a big part of it as well,
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
It feels like we're in an era of hockey now where everybody wants everything to be broken down into a stat that you can just point to a stat and say that means this guy's good or better than this other guy. But it is still a very fast and multifaceted game, and sometimes just watching it saying, man, this guy's all over the ice, he's constantly getting the puck back, setting up teammates, but if it doesn't result in a goal, it's not on the score sheet. You don't necessarily see it. So I guess there's a plus one for the old school eye test guys.
Exactly.
But yeah,
um,
that's kind of what I'm looking for. On the other side, what do you see for the depth on the right side?
So on the right now, and obviously it's a little changed up because of some changes that Talkett's been wanting to do to the lineups lately. But I think Brock Besser would be your number one right winger, which I'm quite happy with that. I think Brock Besser is a first line right winger. Um, then probably Connor Garland, which again I would prefer him in the third spot. Probably I'm okay with him in the second spot. A bit more okay than I think I am with Dakota Joshua, though I do really like Dak, Garland, and Heedle on a line. I've really been enjoying that.
It's
But
a
yeah,
Joshua Garland Bluger line from last year, but
right, yeah,
upgrading Bluger
just
to
much
Heedle.
faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd prefer Garland on the third, but second, okay, okay. Hoglander on the third, I think that's great, and Sherwood on the fourth, I think is great. So I'm pretty happy with the right. Sure, maybe I'd want a little bit of an upgrade on Connor Garland. Not that I want to move off Connor Garland, but I would prefer him on maybe the third spot, and then maybe move Hoglander to the left side and improve on that top six right winger, but I think that's the least of our worries on the forward front, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Garland is in kind of that same camp as Hoglander. He's a guy who's out there and he's making things happen for his line.
A little
Um,
bit more effective, maybe, but
yeah, actually, I saw a stat recently, and I'm gonna try to dig it up and put it on the screen. But it was one particular perspective of looking at, I don't know if it was a percentage of goals that they were on the ice for or something of that nature. And Nils Hoglander was like in the elite of the elite in the last few months. I wish that I had taken a screenshot of it. I'm going to do my best to track it down and put it on screen. And if I can't, I will just cut out this whole section. But it was something like that that implied that he is out there making stuff happen, but he's just not getting rewarded for it on the score sheet. So
totally.
love that kind of player, and certainly happy to have those two. And Hoglander's been on a bit of a ride in terms of his being in favor with the team there. He was
Yep.
certainly looked like on his way out.
And then
Um,
on the
and
on his way up, and then back on his way out again. And
yeah, and if you remember, I think it was the beginning of last year, the Canucks were doing their damnedest to give Connor Garland away to anybody who would take him. Just take him for free. You can have him. And every other team was like, nah, we're good. And now, if you ask me who's indispensable on the Canucks, like he would be right up there. Like there aren't many guys that I think are more important to the energy and the consistency and the production of the team than Connor Garland. So
and he's got, oh yeah, for sure. And Hoglander as well. He's got a $3 million
yeah,
contract coming up.
for 2 years,
Um,
I think.
yeah. So I was a little nervous about that as well. And with the cap going up, that makes that look much better, much better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to keep Hoglander if you can get a good deal for him, but I'm not actively looking to move off him now, I wouldn't say.
And the thing is, if you do move off of Hoglander, you're going to turn around and you're going to look for a guy like Hoglander to take his place, right? You're going to
Exactly.
want a guy who can create chances and drive play and do all of those things. So now you're trying to find the same guy. Why not keep the guy that you have who's
Yeah,
already doing it for you,
that's kind of
right?
where I'm at as well.
Unless you really think that you can get most of what he offers for less money, but I don't think that you can
Yeah.
truly. So
If it helps push like top six center across the line or top two center across the line,
sure.
then sure, maybe, but I don't think you have to try and force that one at all.
And I think he's still underappreciated, like league wide. So I don't know that he would be a piece that teams would identify as, oh man, if we can only get Hoglander, then this deal will, that'll be the tipping point for this.
Yeah, it feels like we're kind of selling low there a bit, but
Yeah, absolutely.
um, okay, so now like Canucks management has done a really good job of re-signing guys this season and last year. Really wanting to know, I think, what they have going forward, trying to get rid of as many question marks as possible. So as of right now, the Canucks only have 4 UFAs coming up this summer. And one of them is Brock Besser. That's the one that's getting a lot of attention right now. Because, I mean, we'll see. I would be surprised if the Canucks keep him without, like, through the deadline without signing him. But we'll see. Pia Suter, who Rick Tocchet seems to love as a defensive forward, kind of as a nice 3C. So I could see that one happen, like in terms of getting a deal done. I can see that one happening. Noah Juelson, who just had surgery to repair. I forget exactly what the injury was, but he's done, I think, for the next 12 weeks, so probably done for the year. And then Derek Forbert, who we mentioned earlier, um, right shot defenseman who is great on the penalty kill. Not a lot else, but great on the penalty kill. So that's not too bad. Like we look at the Leafs, they have John Tavares and Mitch Marner as UFAs. Like this isn't too bad of a group that we're like, okay, I'm not too stressed going into the deadline here. Brock Besser obviously being one of the most one of the best players in the group that I'd maybe be a little ang- anxious about, but yeah.
I kind of love the situation that the Canucks are in with Brock Besser.
Hmm.
And I think the reason is that it sounds like annual value AAV wise, the Canucks and Besser are there. It sounds like it's 8 million per to keep Besser in Vancouver. The problem is term. Besser wants the max 8 years. He wants that security. Sounds like Vancouver doesn't want to go past 5. So they're 3 years apart, and I don't think that's a gap that gets bridged. I don't
That's
think
so much
Besser's
money.
yeah, Besser's not settling for 7, let alone 6 or 5. And the Canucks really don't want to go any further than that. So I think Besser is basically a I don't want to jump ahead to our next section here, but I think I think they have to move off of Besser. I think they can't afford to lose him in free
You
agency for
cannot let him
nothing.
just walk. Not with the if the team was first in the division or right at the top of the conference, okay, I can understand
Keep him
the own
as an
rental
own
idea.
rental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you cannot if you're barely getting through into the playoffs and you can't beat the Ducks and Utah. Um you you can't do that in my opinion.
And I've heard from connected guys, not personally, but through podcasts and sections that they've done, that Canucks could probably get a first plus for Besser, like a first plus a legitimate prospect type of return for Brock Besser.
Well, think about okay, so if I'm the Colorado Avalanche, I'm looking around for someone who I can pair as a sniper with Nathan McKinnon. Like Brock Besser would be perfect for that. Or the Minnesota Wild, who don't have Kirill Kaprizov and are struggling right now. Last night on the money line at the game start against the Avalanche, it was 3.5 times your money for the Wild just to win the game. It was 0-0 at the start of the game. That is unheard of. So the Wild are struggling right now, and I think Brock Besser could really help bring goals. And I think teams like the Wild, like the Avalanche, like the Leafs, and maybe the Rangers, maybe pair him up with JT Miller. Oh, that'd be gross. Um, I could see a lot of teams being in on him and getting a bit of a bidding war going. And like obviously for us, I don't think he's worth a first, a second, and a prospect. But I could see a team paying that at the deadline. Like teams pay up because they know this is like if the Leafs lose in the first round again, that city might burn. Like there's a lot of teams that it's the Hurricanes. How many times have the Hurricanes false started? They need to at least get to the finals. At least get to the finals. Um, there's a lot of desperate teams right now. So I could see a Brock Besser trade bringing in quite a haul.
And the incredible thing is that of the, let's say, of the forward positions, I think a complementary scoring winger, certainly not the hardest one to replace, right? We're talking about Canucks would like to add a young play driving, productive center. That's tough.
Yeah.
That's not easy to
Mm-hmm.
do. But Besser's not a guy who drives play. He's just an opportunistic goal scorer. He's a better version of a guy like
We have a Brock Besser in our system. His name is Lekaramaki,
yeah, yeah. And Lekaramäki's probably got a better shot than Besser too,
probably.
and he's much younger and nearly free for this team. So I would certainly be willing to give Lekaramäki a look, especially if it means getting a significant haul back for Besser. Um, I think it's a no-brainer. I love Brock Besser. I think if he wanted to take a sweetheart deal to stay in Vancouver, like keep making the roughly 6.5 he's making now, I'd be happy to lock him up for more years. But I respect the guy's desire to go and get the bag while he can. This is going to be his one big contract in his career. So you can't fault him for doing that. But I think it makes the Canucks' decision here pretty clear. And I would be very surprised if he was still a Canuck on March 8th.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, Pius Suter, I think, is an interesting discussion. I really like him. He's usually the first guy over the board for the penalty kill, along with Teddy Bluger. Um, he's played up and down the lineup. He's played center. He's played wing. He's one of those Swiss Army knife guys that can kind of do whatever it is you need him to do. And he's potted surprisingly a decent number of goals for the team as well. It's gone kind of cold lately. But man, Suter the shooter, that was a thing for a while. This guy can get hot and get you some goals. So I actually like the idea of bringing Suter back. The question is term and money.
Yeah.
And I think AFP Analytics had him at about 3.5 million
For how
over
long?
four years.
Ooh.
Which, yeah, that was kind of my
Ooh.
reaction too. If you said something like you can get Pius Suter on a 3x3, that even though it doesn't seem like a big difference, that feels much more palatable to
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I could have the choice between Pius Suter and Dakota Joshua right now, I would take Suter just
Mm-hmm.
for the versatility that he offers, and Joshua hasn't been the guy he was previously.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's value there. And like I mentioned with Hoglander, if you do move off of him, you're basically trying to find another Pius Suter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I
Oh
don't know how
man.
you do that for less money. Can you
Yeah.
find a guy who gives you 90% of what Suter gives you for half the price?
Atu
Or
Ratu.
he has not proven it at all at
Mm-hmm.
the NHL level.
But
And the team knows exactly what they have in
he's had a
Suter.
very good year in Abbotsford. I'm going to bring up his numbers right now.
And I think that's one of the reasons that it would have been really nice to see more of him in the lineup prior to the trade deadline.
Yeah. Atu Ratu, playing for the Abbotsford Canucks, has played 32 games, has 13 goals, 18 assists for 31 points. So 31 points in 32 games as a center for the Abbotsford Canucks. And he is currently 22 years old.
Yeah. I would love to know what we've actually got in him in terms of an NHL player. Because if he is that guy that can give you most of what Suter's giving you for basically league minimum, that changes the equation entirely.
Say he gives you half. So Suter, what does Suter have for points this year? He has 15 goals, 12 assists, 27 points in 58 games. So say that Ratu gets you 13 goals in a full season, gets you 40 points, so half point per game. So which is half of what he's doing for Abbotsford right now, which is I think that's a pretty safe bet.
I don't think it is. I'm going to
No?
push back on that one. I think the difference in his deployment alone would crater the numbers. I think he's probably playing big minutes for Abbotsford, and he would absolutely not in
You pair
Vancouver.
him with like Sherwood and O'Connor or Hoglander and O'Connor or something like that. I could see them doing okay. 22 years old. I guess he'll be 23 next year. I could so like I think I'm he's doing half the production he's currently doing for the farm league team. I think that's relatively safe ask.
I
No?
think that would be an incredible
Okay.
um, turn or opportunity for Vancouver
How
if
about he
that
gets
were
you
the
30
case.
points?
I think even that. I think that's super optimistic.
Really?
Yeah,
Um what is Teddy Bluger getting us? Cuz I think like if he's getting you Teddy Bluger numbers, was that seem acceptable? Like
yeah, I could maybe see it.
so Teddy Bluger has 23 points in 59 games. So he's on track for 30 points in the season. So say he gets you 30. could you not make up the other what would that be? Suitor. Suitor has 27 points. So they're basically the same. So say Suitor gets to 45 points this year. Say he like balls out for the last little bit and gets up to 45. I think you could make up the difference with that $3.5 million in free agency or in trade to a top six forward and have Ratu there than to pay 3.5 for 4 years to a guy who's getting you 30-40 points a season.
I think it's a gamble. It may be a gamble they're willing to take. You can't do that too often, right? If we're going to move off of Besser and replace him with guys who can get you most of the way to Besser production, but for less money, you're down production already. If you're saying we're going to replace Suter with a guy who produces less to save money, you're down production again. At some point, you got to hit that home run that increases your production because we're already a team that can't score,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're saying we're going to walk away from goal scoring and bring in guys who score less. Now you need that home run swing, a guy who's going to absolutely drive play and produce for you for sure. And
Right.
who's that guy, and where's the fit?
I mean, do you then go big swing for Mitch Marner or Mikko Rantanen or someone like that? Kirill Kaprizov's going to be UFA next year. He still doesn't have a contract. I don't know. I think I would rather use the 3.5 mil somewhere else and trade Suter for something. I think you can trade Suter for a second, maybe. I think probably, maybe a second next year, something like that. But I think I would rather use that money and put it towards getting a top player, getting using it at free agency if you can get a top player, or using it in a trade to get a top player, rather than just giving it to guys that are not really giving you much more than the young guys are giving you anyway.
I guess it's really the Dakota Joshua situation all over again. We talked about Dakota Joshua before they re-signed him, and you made the point, don't re-sign him. You went and found Dakota Joshua effectively from the scrap heap, and you saw what he could bring, and you brought that out of him, and you got it for next to nothing. You actually made the point back then that you don't re-sign him, you don't pay him. You say thank you very much. That was an incredible year. You were great, but I see you want to get paid. Respect it, but we're going to let you go and we're going to find the next Dakota Joshua. We're going to give him the opportunity for playing for next to nothing with a good team and let him show us what he can do. You find those next guys and you have the confidence that you can do that. And then they didn't with Joshua. And then we've seen this year, and yes, huge grain of salt that he's coming back from an awful situation. So he wasn't 100%, and maybe he's still working his way back. But they gave him the money, and now you see that he hasn't done very much, and he's been back for a while. So at some point, the excuse has to go away, just like Pedersen. But
Mm-hmm.
he hasn't done a whole lot. He certainly hasn't done anything that you couldn't have replaced for a lot less money.
Mm-hmm.
So your point is well taken, and I'm giving you extra credit for having made effectively the same point with Joshua previously, and you would have been right if they had followed it. So I can tentatively get on board with moving off of Suter, but it would have been a whole lot easier if we had seen more of guys like Ratu in the NHL this year.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's something to be said too for to taking guys out of the room. I don't think you wanna really rip apart the room every year because I think that it impacts team culture and that sort of thing. But I do also think that just because a guy has a good year, you can't just re-sign all those guys because you're not going to have any money left for your stars. And odds are those players that came out of nowhere and had a great season aren't going to be able to do that every year.
Yeah.
If you look at the top teams like Colorado, Tampa Bay, Florida, Pittsburgh, they have for many years found players on the cheap that have gone off for them and then let them walk at the deadline or let them walk at free agency. So I think to me that's the mentality you need to have, and you need to trust your scouting staff, both your prospect scouting staff and your NHL scouting staff, to know that you're going to be able to refill these spots without having to just pay the guys who have done it once for you.
Yeah. And I think we've got a couple of guys coming up here in Noah Juleson. Noah, thank you for your service, but especially given the emergence of Pedersen and the acquisition of Mancini, the knocking on the door of Willander, Noah Juleson's he's not getting re-signed. I don't see that at
I
all.
mean, I think he's fine to get re-signed. I think I would just re-sign him to league min, and then he can go down to the farm team. And if
Yeah.
you waive him and he gets picked up, then it doesn't matter. Like I have no
Yes.
problem like keeping him as like a depth guy. You have a lot of experience with him. Talkett and Foot seem to really like him, but I don't think he's a guy you have to make space for on the team because he has to play.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You're not penciling Noah Juleson into your opening night roster for next season.
that's right.
Um, but yeah, if he wants to sign league minimum, I'm happy to have him as like a depth guy who plays in Abbotsford. And if we just run into an awful string of injuries, he makes the occasional appearance.
Yeah,
Kind of the Guillaume Brisebois
yeah,
role,
exactly,
right? It's like if
exactly.
he's playing, you're in a rough spot, but it's also kind of fine if he is because he's not an absolute liability out there.
Totally. One last comment on the Pia Suter
Hmm.
thing is if we are making a move for a top six center that doesn't include moving out Pedersen, Filipino's not going anywhere and Teddy Bluger's not going anywhere, I don't think. So then you're going to need a spot opened up anyway. So I wonder if that's the easy guy to take out of the lineup to fill, like, say you went and got like another top. I'm not going to say names because I want to leave that for our actual trades. But say you went and got a top six center from another team. I think, I think we're, um, I think we'd be happy and fine just to have Suter traded and to have that spot filled with more of a top six center than keeping a guy for 4 years when he's already 28 and is very much a third line center.
I think I envision if a center's coming back, the kind of center that I want to come back, it probably is going to involve Pedersen going out.
Mm,
But I also think, just to address the point more specifically, I think I'm fine with either Bluger or Suter playing the
fair,
wing and
fair.
having an extra solid NHL caliber center in the lineup playing on the wing just gives you that little bit of extra stability in case you
That's
do have
fair.
an injury. You get a
Totally.
top six center go down, you can move Suter up there. He can fill that role. Not ideal, but he can, right? And then Bluger slides in to center your fourth.
Yeah,
So
I could see
I
that.
like the idea of having an extra center in the lineup, but you can also get away with not having it. So
Yeah. All right. Should we get to the trades?
I just want to really quickly get your thought on Derek Forbert
Oh, of course. Sorry, I missed
because
him. Yeah.
we've heaped a bit of praise on Derek Forbert this episode already, which I absolutely did not see coming at the beginning of the year. I didn't understand his role on the team, but it's been made very clear lately why they went out and got this guy and exactly what his fit is. Um, Kind of projecting what the defense could look like moving forward. I really don't mind keeping him around, but again, it depends on what can you get him signed for. If you can get him signed for dirt cheap, I am more than happy to keep Forbert around.
Yeah.
Do you have a number
Um,
in mind that? that you would do?
Under 2.5 million a year.
Yeah,
I think under 2.5 million, I'm very happy to pay that for a good penalty kill.
I think he's
Um,
1.5 now.
yeah. So
I'd,
that's,
I'd maybe give him two. I don't know that I could justify going more than that when you have guys knocking on the door wanting
yeah.
to come up.
I think I can go up to 2.3, but if it's 2.3, it can't go over like 2 years. Like it's got to be shorter.
Yes.
If it
Yeah.
wants longer, then the money goes down a bit.
Yeah.
Something like that. But yeah, I'll pay that for a penalty kill. I'm totally good with that.
Absolutely.
All
Okay.
right, off
Where
to the
to next,
trades.
J Dog?
So we are going to be doing three. We have brought some trade proposals, trades that well, three different things. One trade that we think is most likely to happen with the Vancouver Canucks. One that we want to happen the most with the Vancouver Canucks, and one that we think scares us that the Canucks might do, and that makes us very nervous for for making that decision. So, first, we're going to be looking at most likely trade for the Canucks to make. Or no, sorry, which one did you want to start with?
Yeah, we can do the most likely.
Okay, sure.
That works. Now, I have a couple. So I will go with one to start, and if you don't take my second, then we'll do an honorable mention.
Sounds good.
I think the most likely trade, and I alluded to it earlier, is that the Canucks move off of Brock Besser. I think there might technically be one trade that's more likely than that I think you might have. But I think the Brock Besser one is more exciting in terms of what it could potentially bring back. And it's one of those kind of big fork in the road moments that kind of change what your team looks like. Besser's been a Canuck longer than anybody. So moving out of the Brock Besser era and getting back potentially a first round pick plus a good prospect is honestly a pretty exciting prospect or proposition. So, and I think it's super likely because they are far apart and I don't think they're bridging that gap. So my most likely trade, Brock Besser for, I'm going to call it a package of futures.
What would you say the futures are? What do you think they could get from?
I think it's going to be a first round pick and it's going to be a B plus kind of prospect, like a guy who's probably got NHL future more or less guaranteed, but not star power,
Okay. Cool.
which is kind of vague, but I think it's specific enough to count.
Totally. Well, it does a nice job of describing in a vague way what my trade will describe more specifically.
Okay.
My trade that I think is most likely to happen is Vancouver trading Brock Besser and the 2026 third round pick to the Colorado Avalanche because I can totally see him lining up with McKinnon, and I don't think they got Natchez on that line. That would be a
It's a
very good
scary
line
line.
for the Avalanche. In return, the Avalanche will be sending back a 2026 first round pick because I don't believe they have the 2025 first. A 2025 second round pick. And Ivan, a Czech player who was drafted 36th overall in the 2019 draft.
And a
I
member of the all name team.
That's right. I thoroughly enjoyed cheering for Ivan in I think it was the 2020 World Juniors, something like that.
We've got
Great
Pedersen
name.
on defense. Why
That's
not
right.
Ivan?
And he's a 22-year-old center, shoots left, and has actually played 40 games with the Colorado Avalanche this year. He has eight points, 5 goals, 3 assists in 40 games, and has 6 points in 16 games with the Colorado Eagles. So has some NHL experience as well. Brings in another young centerman. Add that to your rotation. But the Canucks are never just done with one trade, are they? This management loves flipping picks for other
Yes,
players.
they do.
So, about an hour later, the
This is your
Canucks.
most likely
This is my
trade?
most likely. An hour later, well, whatever time period, but I'm going to say an hour later, the Canucks then flip that first round 2026 first round pick and 2025 second round pick to the Buffalo Sabres for Dylan Cousins. That fills that top six spot. I think Dylan Cousins has a bit better offensive power than Philip Hedl, but is kind of in that realm. And we get two centers out of this deal, and by giving up a UFA Brock Besser and next year's third round pick. Thoughts?
I rate that trade one Happy Gilmore 2.
What does that mean? I'm so confused.
No, I should have saved that. I should have saved that rating. I'm gonna go with instead. That would be a Tyler Myers clap bomb off the rush because
Okay.
I love it. I love it.
Okay.
If the Canucks could pull off something like that, getting an impact center and a center with upside, right? I think that would be an unbelievable return for your UFA winger, your non-impact, and that's harsh to say of Besser. He still has an impact, but a non-play driving winger, you're going to get back two centers and solidify yourself down the middle. Your biggest area of weakness would be an incredible bit of business for the Canucks.
Totally.
So I absolutely love it. Um, I don't think it is remotely likely that all takes place.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think any individual part of that could take place.
Yeah.
Canucks could maybe get Dylan Cousins for a first and something, maybe. I don't know. And certainly Besser to the Avalanche makes a certain degree of sense. Man, if that happens, I think this show will take off because that kind of prediction coming true would really give it some credibility.
We'll have to
My
clip that one,
goodness.
but only if it happens.
Yeah. I'll have it clipped and ready to post.
Immediately.
Do you have a newspaper? Maybe we should like hold up a newspaper or something.
Here.
Yeah, it's about 10:30 a.m. March 1st. So yeah, what do we have here? March 1. Yeah. So my goodness, that is quite the prediction. Wow.
I mean, I called Zadorov to the Canucks last year, so we'll see.
You did. You truly did. And it's funny, I learned from that. J-Dog called Zadorov to the Canucks, and I wasn't all that familiar with Zadorov. So, of course, first thing I do is I YouTube this guy, and I'm like, holy, I would love this guy on the Canucks. And I did. And then earlier this year, back when there was still rumor of Pettersson getting moved, but it wasn't the the situation we find ourselves in now. He was trying to figure out what would be a good return for Elias Pettersson, and he said he would trade Pettersson straight up for Tage Thompson. And I thought that was the stupidest thing I had heard maybe in my entire life. And then, of course, what do? I go and I watch a Tage Thompson highlight video, and I'm completely sold. And I'm like, okay, I would probably do that trade straight up now as well. Now, I think that trade is very much off the table at this point. But if we could have just followed J-Dog's advice at the time, had Tage Thompson and potentially Dylan Cousins down the middle, Ivan, then you've got your Philip Hedl as your 3C. Man, that'd be pretty fun. That would be super fun. I don't know that there's a guy that I would want to add to my team in terms of what the Canucks are right now and what I think they need. I don't know that there's a guy that would meet that need better than Tage Thompson.
Mm.
But
okay. I mean, I
Anyways,
agree.
yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of which, what trade would you most like to see?
So I see. Now I just kind of want to say J Dog's trade from the first part because that would be fantastic. Um, but realistically, I think I most want to see, and it's so hard to say this out loud, but I think I most want to see them move off of Pedersen. And something happened recently that kind of really put me over the top in that regard. And I take it with a grain of salt, but I think there's something to it. And that was hearing that there isn't a great relationship between Elias Pettersson and the Sedins.
That was from Jason and Bruff, I believe.
I believe it was. And the thinking was that Pettersson is a bit of a lone wolf who wants to go it himself. He wants to figure it out for himself. And I don't know if that's an ego thing or a pride thing, but I think about two guys who came into the league with a lot of expectations, ran into some difficulty. They weren't the strongest players. They had to figure out how to be legitimate NHL players. They had to work through their struggles. And not only did they do that, but they did it to such an incredible extent that they're in the Hockey Hall of Fame, both of them. And you have those two guys right there saying, "Hey, maybe we could help. Maybe we've got some things we could teach you." And if there's a player out there who's willing and is actively ignoring the help of Henrik and Daniel Sedin, I cannot, in all honesty, imagine a bigger red flag for a player than ignoring
Totally.
those two guys.
Yeah.
So that's really put it over the top for me. If that is remotely true, and I can kind of see it, um, that it's goodbye, good riddance. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Um, and in terms of what's coming back, so
So, sorry.
okay,
I
J
think I
Dog stuff.
said Jason and Bruff. It's Jason Bruff.
It's Halford and Bruff.
Halford and
Yeah,
Bruff. I just wanted to make that note. Continue.
yeah. Um, okay. So I also talked to J Dog about what do I really want to see the Canucks accomplish, kind of big picture wise, with the trade deadline. And I think that every move the Canucks make right now and for the next year or two has to be in service of making and keeping Quinn Hughes happy. Because Quinn Hughes is the Vancouver Canucks, period, full stop. As much as Pedersen was a shiny new toy for a while there, Hughes is he's next level, right? He's the guy Vancouver fans have always wanted, and now we've got him.
Probably the best player Canucks have ever had.
Probably,
Probably.
if we can keep him past his next contract, I think he'll go down as the greatest Canuck of all time.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that derails that is if we lose him, and the only way I think we're going to lose him, because I think he's a pretty loyal guy. I think he really values the team, the city, the fans. I think all of that. I think the only way you lose him is if you're taking steps that don't make him happy. That you're
Yeah.
not building towards a winner and doing it in such a way that he can really get on board and support. So I looked at guys that kind of fill a need for the team in terms of the position and the style of play, but that also might make Quinn Hughes happy. And the name that kept coming up was Joshua Norris. And he's injured right now. There was some talk that he might get back in for tonight. It looks like that's not going to be the case.
Oh no, he's playing tonight.
Oh, he is in now?
Just put him in my fantasy lineup. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful.
All three Sounders are playing tonight.
Perfect. So Norris is back in. He's not the most prolific of scorers. And he does have an injury history, but he has shown the potential to produce. And I understand he is good friends with Quinn Hughes from their days in Michigan.
Like one of his best friends. Yeah.
Yes. So if that's a move that can help the team in an area of weakness down the middle and it keeps Quinn Hughes happy, that's a win-win. Now, Norris was mentioned in trade rumors earlier in the year. I haven't heard his name mentioned as much of late. So I don't know realistically how likely that trade is. And obviously, there would be moving pieces. Pedersen makes a fair bit more than Norris does. I think Norris is 7.9. PD's, as everybody knows, 11.6. But that, as the two centerpieces of the trade, is what I would most want to see. Move off of the guy who can't accept help from probably currently the two greatest Canucks of all time, and get in a guy who's going to be the greatest Canuck of all time,
Mm-hmm.
happy and fill a need. So that's my most wanted trade.
So PD out, Norris in some capacity.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll leave it up to Alvin and Rutherford to figure out the details and make the numbers work. Throw in a pick or a prospect wherever it's needed. Just get it done.
I mean, I can totally see it. Ottawa's a team that has struggled to just get into the playoffs, has taken big swing over big swing after big swing on like DeBrincat and Tarasenko, and have
They're probably going
not.
to lose their big name in Kachuk.
It's very possible. And that fan base is getting a little tired. They have a new owner. There's a lot pent up in Ottawa right now. Um, and I can totally see a guy like Pedersen actually doing well on that team. I think he could thrive. I think they've got a good number of Swedish players on that team. Yeah, I can see that totally working, and I can see Josh Norris being a piece in return that would fit very nicely on that 1C spot. It opens up a lot more cap space to fill in the rest of the holes. He's good friends with Quinn Hughes. I can totally see it. Now, I think we also probably get more in return than just Norris, which I like as
I would
well.
hope. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I give that an A. I think that's a solid A. It's something I've looked at and wondered about and kind of hoped for.
I should
Again,
also mention I don't think that Norris's ceiling is the same as Pedersen's ceiling.
right,
I think if both are playing to their potential, Pedersen is definitely the better player.
right.
But I think you're probably going to get maybe more consistency out of Norris
Norris is very consistent.
and the extra money, right? And I'm also kind of leaning on the Cousins thing because I do like Vancouver bringing Cousins in. So I'm envisioning like a Norris Cousins Heedle down the middle. And so you might not have that upper end, but you have depth galore down the middle. So that's kind of the vision there. Sorry, go ahead.
Totally, yeah. I give that a Brock Besser coming down off the wing and sniping at top shelf. That's just something we've seen before, something that makes sense. And
We haven't
something I
seen
can.
much of that lately, though. I'd love to see it.
It's true, but we haven't seen a lot of trades like that lately either. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, very good. I
Your
like it
most
a
wanted
lot.
trade, J Dog.
Okay, I kind of have two here as well. I was going to save one for the honorable mention. The one I'm going to save actually includes the Tage Thompson piece because that's just a personal joy of mine. But my most wanted trade, it's a little wild, it's a little crazy, but it would involve the Vancouver Canucks trading Elias Pettersson, EP40, Carson Soucy, and Tom Willander to the New York Islanders for Brock Nelson, Noah Dobson, and a first round pick for this year. Who, again, we use that first and we flip it for someone like Cousins, Casey Middlestat, someone like that.
Everybody knew that second part of the trade was coming, right?
Yes. I actually don't even have it written here. It's just kind of a gimme, right? Like there's no chance they're holding on to the first. It's going somewhere for a centerman of some sort.
Okay, so what's the total in, total out on those deals?
So Carson Soucy is, I think, around 3, right?
Yep. Oh, by the
And,
way, Carson Soucy was my honorable mention for most likely trade. I think he's also. I
I
don't know
figured
if I
that's where you're
mentioned that,
going.
but I think he's also for sure gone.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so he's about 3, EP40's 11 and a half. Tom Willander's nothing. Brock Nelson is is 4 and Noah Dobson is 6, I think. Let me just check. Um, Brock Nelson is 6 and Noah Dobson is 4. I had them reversed. Noah Dobson is 4, but he's an RFA this summer. Brock Nelson is 6, but he's a UFA this summer. So I don't know if we're able to keep Brock Nelson past the deadline, but he would be a piece that can give you, like, that'd be a good piece for a run this year. I mean, we're in a playoff spot. And then Noah Dobson, he's an RFA, so I think we got a good chance of locking him up. I'd feel pretty happy about that. Right shot defenseman, 25 years old.
Does he um, supplant Chronic to play with Hughes?
Um, oh, that'd be wild. No,
Because that probably gets him locked up.
Yeah, true. But I
You want
think
to
he
play
might
long term
go.
with
I
Quinn
think he
Hughes
might
on
go
here
second pair with Marcus
with
Pettersson,
Pedersen?
and we have the most insane
Oh,
defensive core in the league. Absolutely insane. That'd
and
be wild.
Alvin and Rutherford would love him because he's 6'4".
Yeah,
They do
exactly.
love their tall boys.
6'4", right shot defenseman who's 25 years old. Exact same draft year as Quinn Hughes. Picked like I think a couple spots later. So yeah, that could totally see that. I think he was drafted 11 and Quinn was 9 or something like that, 8 or 9 in the same draft. So anyway, that would be fabulous. And then you can move off Willander because you have Dobson. Like there's not going to
Yeah.
be space for Willander. So, and then you've got the first round pick that's able to bring in a depth centerman. You can either flip Nelson or something like that. But that is the trade I would most like to see. Thoughts?
I have to rank that trade Quinn Hughes breaking ankles at the offensive blue line.
It'd be pretty
Yeah,
sweet. And I
it
mean,
would
there's
be
already been
pretty
rumors
sweet.
around it. So,
Man, you just salivate at the idea of Hughes, Hronik, and Pedersen Dobson.
like, that's ridiculous.
You've got two legitimate NHL first pair defense. Ah,
And then you have Elias Pettersson and Myers. And then who would be getting kicked out?
Forbert.
Uh, Forbert, right, which he's even a UFA at the end of the year. And then
Yeah,
you have Mancini and Susi as your extras, or
and
you
then
trade Susi.
when Myers ages out, which he's coming up on that. Let's be real. You've got a guy like Mancini
And
waiting.
Sawyer Binio. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Wow.
And
Wow.
Adam Foote is the happiest man in the world as the
Oh,
defensive coach of the Canucks. Yeah. So anyway, that's my most wanted trade. Now, off to scariest trades. Would you like to go first, or do you want me to?
you know what? I feel like your trades have blown mine out of the water in every scenario. So we'll save yours for the end.
Okay.
We'll end on a high note. Um, I'm going to keep my scariest trade really simple. I mean, the scariest thing the team could do would be to trade Quinn Hughes, but I think that's an absolute non-starter. I think if
Yep.
there's one guy, maybe in the entire NHL, who's truly untouchable, it might be Quinn Hughes. He's
Yep.
that important to this team. Um, so that would be terrifying, but it's not in the realm of possibility. What is in the realm of possibility that would scare the pants off me, I think, is moving off of Demko right now.
Oh,
That
yeah.
to me would be terrifying. And I love Lankinen, but J Dog and I have had this conversation a couple of times. There's some level of concern about Lankinen over a full grinding season of being an NHL starter. He's never done it, right? We don't know how he's going to hold up to that, how the performance would go. I have a fair degree of faith, but putting a team that, if any of these trades come to fruition, the Canucks are potentially back into a serious contention opportunity. Do you want to lay that entirely at the feet of a guy who's never been a number one? and kind of hoping maybe that Demko gets back to full health. Well, I guess sorry, we're saying that we're moving off of Demko,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah.
But that's a concern, right? If
Yeah.
you do that, you're laying it at the feet of Lankinen, who's never done it. I would
Oh, I
feel
would
more
not feel comfortable with
confident.
that.
I would feel much more confident keeping Demko, even if he is in and out of the lineup, because when he is in the lineup, he's a guy who prepares harder than anybody and is going to
Yeah.
rehab harder than anybody to get back and be the very best he could be. And I think he would be a great guy to have around Lankinen. I think they make a great pair. So it would scare the pants off of me to move off of Demko. And then what do you have? You have Shilovs as your backup. Shilovs has scared the pants off me the last few times
Yeah.
he's played for Vancouver. So
And then you're just like hoping for Ty Young or someone like that. Yeah.
yeah, now you're hoping for a guy to step up and become a backup, or you're scouring the free agent market, which doesn't look great for goaltending. And then you're
Yeah.
probably going to pay that guy another $5 million. So
Although, if it was to someone like Carolina and they paid for Demko, they actually gave like a very solid haul, and you got Kachekov back. So you have Kachekov and Lankinen as your duo, and you've now freed up a bit more cap space. You've got two NHL goaltenders. I could be I could be convinced of that, but it would have to be something like that where I'm getting back a guy that I'm like, okay, that's a lower end starter. If we got two lower end starters, I think I'm like, I wouldn't say that Skinner and Pickard are two low end starters, and yet they went to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final last year. So I
right.
don't think you don't need to have Vasilevsky in order to be good, but if you can have two good goaltenders, I think that's enough, especially if you've got a really good defense.
Yeah. You had Noah Dobson.
But I'm scared to move Demko because I don't think you're getting the value
Yeah.
that you should get for him. And I think I would rather keep him because his deal's up next year. And if he's great next year, awesome. You've got a great goaltender. If he's not great next year, then you can probably sign him at under market value. So I think we're in a good spot just to keep him regardless. And we've
Or
got
if he's
another
healthy,
goaltender.
yeah, if he's healthy and he's having a down year next year, you can move off of him, right?
Sure.
If you're convinced that Lankinen's your guy, you can move off of Demko then. But I feel like it would be selling so low because there's so much uncertainty around his health, and I think that uncertainty is warranted at this
Yeah.
point. It makes me nervous. Um,
But like
so
our other teams are also going to be nervous. So I just don't see that being a good deal. It would only have to be if someone like the Hurricanes is like, we are so desperate, we will give you a whole bunch just at the hope that Demko is going to be Demko. So
yeah,
all right, I like it. Yeah, that was a very good scary trade. Um, my scary trade is a pretty simple one as well, and I've heard Casey Middlestat brought up quite a bit as a guy who's on the market, the guy who can fill that center role. And I don't hate Middlestat. Um, I think he was on a bad Buffalo team and just it didn't work out great there. And then he was just traded recently for Bowen Byram. So Bowen Byram went to Buffalo. He went to Colorado. And he is making over $5 million a year and has not performed the way that Colorado was hoping he would on that team. Now he's being thrown out as a center option for the Canucks in a trade, and I am scared that the Canucks are going to trade someone like Connor Garland for Casey Middlestat.
oh,
Take off the wing, and I've heard Connor Garland's name thrown around as well as like, is this a piece you move off of to shore up the center spot? And I'm scared they're almost equal money in, money out, but Casey's like 750,000 a year more. And I'm scared that they're going to make a decision like that to shore up center and be like, well, that's just the cost of getting top six centerman, even though I don't think he is a top six centerman. And if Colorado's not happy with him, I don't want to be happy with him either. I think that's a good sign that you should not buy. So anyway, I'm nervous that we extend we stretch too far to get Casey Middlestat. I think I feel confident enough in this management group. They've done enough to show me that I'm not actually like too scared. If it was Jim Benning, I would be very scared. But these guys have shown me that I think I can trust them to not do something like that. But when you're desperate, sometimes you can make poor decisions, and I'm just a little nervous. I'd say that's the one that I'm not sold on Casey Middlestat. If you want to do Connor Garland for like Dylan Cousins, I could be a bit more convinced. I still wouldn't love it, but I could be a bit more convinced. Um, but I think the thing I'm worried about with losing Garland is what he brings to the team in terms of personality and
100%.
drive. And
Yeah.
I'm nervous that you move off JT Miller and off Connor Garland in the same year. Like Sherwood's not going to be able to do all that for you. So anyway, I think he brings a big leadership aspect to the team. I want to keep him for a long, long time. So I'm scared that he's going to get moved, but I'm not. It's not so realistic that I'm terrified. That's what makes me nervous.
I would rank that trade a Tyler Myers cross check to the face. That would be terrible. I can't imagine something that would be, well, sure I can, but that would be real bad.
Yeah.
Real bad. I don't think it's very likely. I think the way Tocchet wants the team to play is not in alignment with Middlestat's game at
Right.
all. He is not a defensively responsible player.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think Garland has just tremendous value to the
I
Canucks.
agree.
Yeah, but that would be horrifying. Garland's one of those guys that you just, in my mind, you cannot trade.
I heard both those guys' names get thrown around enough on podcasts and
Really?
shows this year or this past week that I
Like
just got a little
from Canuck fans, guys who watch
from
Garland,
Canucks
or
shows like Canucks
really?
podcasts and stuff. So it just made me a little spooked. That's all.
Uh-huh.
I think we're okay, but I'm just a little nervous.
I hadn't heard that one, but yeah, it would have the same effect on me.
Okay, do you have any honorable mentions?
Um, no, I mean the lineup that I had at the end of the day, our defense was the same, our goaltenders were the same. We just effectively move off of Petey and Besser, and we bring in Norris and Cousins, and then you have a little bit of money left over that you can do something with Suter or somebody else.
Norris, Cousins, Hedel. That's
Yeah,
pretty epic down the
yeah.
middle. That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
You don't have that sky high top end, but you've just got depth for days.
Yeah, exactly.
That scenario where it's like it doesn't really matter which line's coming over the board because you've got a solid center coming out.
Yeah, totally. And they're all young guys. They're all like Quinn Hughes' age, basically. You can see
Yep.
which one of them takes the 1C, 2C, that sort of thing. So.
I believe they were all from the first round in the same draft class.
No way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think Cousins, Norris, and Hedel were all 2017
Go get
first
Dobson
round
as well.
centers.
Add it to the group.
Right? I mean, it was a good first round.
Yeah.
So,
That's great.
yeah. Closing thoughts for J-Dog.
Okay, so let's talk about that Tage Thompson deal.
Oh,
So,
yes. What do you think that actually takes?
Okay, so Vancouver trading Elias Pettersson EP40, which is 11.6 for 7 more years, and Sawyer Minio, the 3rd round pick in 2023, played in the World Junior team this past year, and a 6th round pick for Tage Thompson, who's at 7.14 for 5 more years.
You really think Pettersson gets you Thompson at this point?
I think mixed with a high-end defensive prospect.
High-end?
I mean, when you make the Canadian World Junior team, that puts you like there's only 5 other defensemen they chose, or 6 other defensemen they chose above him in all of Canada. So in like a range of like 4 years. So
I am not even joking when I say I would do Pedersen and Willander in a heartbeat.
I think that'd be too much for me. You're talking about like like a fifth overall pick and another first round pick for Tage Thompson with the injury issues that Tage has had. I think he's a really good player. I think he's really good. I think his ceiling isn't as high as
Yeah.
Pedersen's is. His floor is obviously higher, and the money is better. But I'd be nervous to do that. I think we're maybe giving up too much. Like I think Willander can be a top 3, top 2 defenseman. So like I'd a star centerman and a young defenseman for Tage Thompson.
Formerly star center.
You got to sell it like he's still a star, though.
Yes. Still star. Buffalo, still star.
I would like EP40 for Tage 1-for-1, and I think EP40 still like listening to former AGM for the Canucks, Gilman talk about, he's like, oh yeah, there's lots of teams out there still that are looking at EP40 and being like, we can fix him. I know we can fix him. He just needs a change of scenery, some new vibes, fix that leg up a little bit. We can fix him and he'll be great again. There is teams that out there that are still willing to fix this guy. And I'm hearing lots of podcasts and lots of guys that are very plugged in saying Buffalo does not have a single player that is safe. So like Buffalo's not in like like we're doing great and we're
you gotta
making
knock
the
our
playoffs.
Socks off to get a guy.
Exactly. No, they're in like, talk about Vancouver being in desperation mode. This team hasn't seen the playoffs since I was like in elementary school, like actually literally. so they need to make playoffs, and Tage has been there for quite a few years and played very well and hasn't done it. So I think shakeups need to happen, and I don't know. I could see a Sawyer Minio like a 5th or 6th and EP40 for Tage.
I just want to see some bold moves. I want to see this team shaken up. I don't think they need to sell everything and tear it down and, do a full rebuild. But to quote, I guess, Jim Benning, a retooling on the fly, I think actually is entirely possible.
Yeah.
And if the Canucks have ever had a management group that's probably capable of pulling it off and identifying the right players to target, it's probably this one.
Totally.
So I'm hopeful that we get some big moves that improve the team moving forward and kind of create the kind of team that the dogs on skates want to see. Just a team full of dogs on skates. Yeah. I've been a Canucks fan for too long to be optimistic that that's going to happen, but it sure would be great.
For sure.
And just do the J-Dog trades. If Vancouver's listening, just, I don't know, hire J-Dog if you want, or just steal his trades. It doesn't really matter. Just
at least give me a shout out. Come on.
Right? Oh, that'd be pretty great. Good shout, J-Dog, on those.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps up our trade deadline preview show. Do you have any last thoughts before we go?
We'll be back post deadline to break down what actually took place.
Sure will be.
We will be pleased couple of guys by the changes that have been made. We'll review not only what the Canucks have done, but we'll take a quick run through the NHL and take a stab at rating what other teams have done and see who came out winners and losers.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I would highly recommend that show. It's going to be a blast looking at every single trade, grading them. We're going to have good graphics. It's going to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to it. And we've got our episode 4 as well. This isn't episode 4. We have episode 4 also coming out here over the next little bit. So there'll be lots of content this week. So hope you all enjoy. Absolutely. And yes, enjoy the springtime. That means the playoffs is coming.
Wish you all a very happy trade deadline day.
Indeed. All right. Goodbye, y'all.
Peace.
Peace.